Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
On everybody, welcome to episode 48 of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. We are
Wow, there's 48
in
states in America, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And then there's the two bastard states that people only care about, during summer vacation, and then the one that's way up to the north that no one.
Yeah, the one that people think about that they go hunting on their hunting excursions, or the ones that go
exactly.
to Maui.
And, the one where the millionaires go to get their untarnished salmon runs or whatever the hell they fish for up there,
The Deca millionaires. Yeah, right. I know some
hillbillies that go up there. That's how a lot of that shit is, though, right? Is there's like, it's funny because like there's super rural areas which are like always like blue collar, and like that was where the layman used to live and work the land and all that sort of shit. And now that all those places are being inundated by the ultra rich that are like, oh, you own this? That's cute. I'm going to give you more money than God to get the fuck out so I can go and do what you're doing. Right. Which is.
Yes. So I can pretend to do what you're doing. Right.
I can.
There's no other place than that. Like the place that I think really speaks to that a lot is Jackson, Wyoming. Like I feel like it's like Wyoming in general, other than Jackson, is a very like blue collar, hardworking. Like that's the description everybody thinks of. But you go to Jackson, no, not at all that. But there's some beautiful farm fields, some beautiful old barns, and then like $30 million mansions on the side of a hill.
I mean, even where I grew up, Bozeman, Montana. When I grew up there, it was still a pretty quiet town. Like I remember when the first, department store started coming there. Like when I was younger, like elementary school age, the only real department store we had was like a Walmart, and like everywhere.
You guys didn't have a Montgomery Wards?
Didn't have any of that, but I remember when like Target came, and then there was Costco, and then Home Depot, and then all of a sudden now there's like everything. And the price of property there is now like average price $1 million. Most of the homes are second homes, vacation homes. It's just ridiculous, and that's just how it goes. I mean, it
happens. People like us are ruining the world.
So anyway, we are on full steam ahead right now, man. We currently have 17 in escrow. Yeah. You've been managing our dispo process entirely. All sorts of stuff going up and down, and to make it better, this is going to be the last episode with me for a little bit because I am pissing off to Africa. Actually, when this episode comes out, I will be on a plane headed to South Africa for the month of September.
Nice.
So I appreciate you.
Yep. Trying to find that malaria.
Right. Yeah. I'm taking my drugs. I took my first typhoid pill this morning, so I'm getting it locked in.
Did you take doxycycline for your? Do you taking doxycycline for your
I just took whatever the hell they
malaria?
Gave. It's probably like sugar.
You don't have to do like a little pink pill.
I literally don't know. I don't have to take them yet. I don't have to take them until 3 days before we're in like the malaria area, which will be which is like gonna be a week or so after we get there. We're gonna be in South Africa for about a week.
Well, so I remember from the military, there's two types of pills they gave us for the malaria stuff. One, methaquin, which they have now shown to like create psychotic breaks in your mind and like create like people, turn people into murderers.
Yeah.
So don't take that one. And then the pink pill, doxy.
No, we can't.
You can't? Okay. The government was just getting rid of the last bits from probably Vietnam. And then the pink one, the doxycycline, is like makes you like super sensitive to the sun. So if you're going to be out like on safari,
that's good to know. Yeah. So the first one you mentioned, it's funny when we were doing a little bit of research, there's that one because you had to take it it was like a month after you were out of the area, and it was supposed to give you like horrible nightmares. And I guess you don't you can't get that one anymore. They give you the other one now. So.
Okay, they got rid of that one. Oh, good. It's discontinued. Sweet. That's what happened to most of our sellers is they were taking methaquin and they just turned into psychos.
But so I am greatly appreciative of the fact that you are willing to let me go around and do this nonsense while you sort of hold down the ship. I guess the benefit of us being good
I
friends
didn't
and
have a
working
choice.
business partners is, you're willing to have a friendship side there as well.
Right. Yeah, we need to separate ourselves on separate continents for 1 month a year. That's how we stay together.
I mean, to be fair, traditionally when I've traveled, those are usually some of our best periods of time. I think, I'm not there being the bottleneck for everything anymore. So.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we've got a lot. I think this time around we have a lot more going on, different business streams coming in, and then our businesses are scaling more so than they have in the past.
Yeah,
and so this will be.
It will be, but I'll say the caveat. I think that with how we've started to structure stuff and with the team we currently have in place, I do feel that the team is a lot more independent than they've ever been in the past.
No, for sure. Yeah, we have people that our sales team is going to keep doing their job, and of course, with me just kind of looking at Dispo from its entirety right now, it's already in my pocket, so I don't have to pick up anything there.
So, but yeah, we got all sorts of stuff going on. We got like a little cabin up on a hill that James actually messaged me about before and said he was legitimately really impressed with how it looks. So that's a good sign. He said it's nice.
Oh, it's nice.
It's really nice. Yeah.
Ooh.
We got tons of stuff around the country, including some fat deals that are coming through.
Fat stacks, like geez,
fee, a 40,000 fee, a couple 40,000 fees. Yeah, that's under contract price. Never mind. But still 75,000 fee and a couple 40,000 fees in there.
Wait, did you say a $40,000 contract price? We actually have two under at 40. Yeah, we do have a couple. Actually, have three of those right now. 3 properties across, like one in Spokane and 2, I think, in Ohio that are $40,000 purchase prices.
I would have thought that last year. Yeah, things are moving, and I think the biggest challenge right now, which of course, which I guess we would say we predicted this a while back, is that people have always asked right now, like, how is the market affecting us? And like I think it's a while back, on the acquisition side, I expected to get easier. On the disposition side, I expected to get harder, and that's exactly what's happened. Like we had a little lull in leads and acquisitions through like May and June-ish period. Like there wasn't a lot of action going on. People wanted to have conversations, but now all of a sudden it is like full steam ahead on lead generation. We're getting so many new calls. We're getting calls from stuff that we sent out 6-7 months ago. And people are like starting to come around to it. Like, even if they didn't have any interest before, now they're like, we need to sell right now. We're having stuff that's like huge price drops on some of the original asks of people that we talked to 6 months ago. Now they're willing to sell to us for like 30% lower, because they realize that their property is a piece of shit. No one else is going to buy it.
Nobody's looking at it.
The plus side of it though, is we have those opportunities. But I guess I would say the downside is just the disposition is challenging, especially in somewhere like Spokane where we don't have like that token company. Like I feel like a lot of places, a lot of people that we talk to in like larger markets, they're like, oh yeah, you just sell everything to this group that does like 100 flips a year, like they're massive, all that sort of stuff. We don't really have that. And the one thing that we had that was kind of close to that is ceasing operations for a little bit. So, like there is, it's kind of like a weird thing because we're basically trying to sell stuff to amateurs, but the amateurs right now, it's kind of like scary for them. So it's been an interesting story.
Right. Yeah. Well, they don't. Yeah, and they don't have as much of a runway. So one flip is going to hurt them if they're only doing one flip at a time. If they're flippers or even buy and hold folks, they're a little bit smaller. And you're right. It's like we've talked to quite a few wholesalers across the country, and the ones that are like massive operations, they have that one person, right, that they sell to. Or they have big hedge funds operating in their market, and they're not doing too well right now because all the hedge funds are on pause, just like a lot of buyers are. They're like, I kind of want to see how the summer goes. There's still buyers out there. We're still selling them. We just have to get more creative with how we're locking things up. And we have, I think when we're underwriting deals, it's like, how do we not buy this house and then see if we can get it for that price?
And I think that's been the big sort of change as well, is, us looking to potentially close on more if we need to, but making sure that we have multiple exits. But that's always managing the capital problem there. And then, I would say that the disposition at this point is less just like throw it out to the wolves and see who wants it, and more finding specific properties that individual people want and going to them directly and basically making that direct connection. Because if you throw something out right now, I think people like just aren't necessarily looking to compete on stuff. Even if they do want it, if they're newer, they're typically not even going to inquire because they're like, oh, somebody else is probably already going to buy it, which is generally not the case, right? Especially right now. That's something that's always been interesting to me is there will be people that are like, oh yeah, I see your emails. I just never look to put in an offer because I figure someone else is going to pay more than me. I'm like, well, you don't know. Like, you might as well give it a shot.
Yeah. Might as well at least put an offer, even if it's a low offer every single time.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really valuable point is if you're making offers for wholesale deals, as long as you're not kicking people through the mud, because we also have our shit list of buyers now of people who have gone through that whole process. And then they say yeah, I'm super interested. And then they kick it around for 4 days and they go, well, actually, I didn't realize that I was going to have to redo one of the bathrooms. So I'm out. It's like, well, fuck you. It's a fixer-upper house.
Yeah. Yes. And those types of buyers, because I'm spiteful, don't get a second chance with us.
That's probably why we can't find anyone. No one has a second chance anymore.
I know, because we're so spiteful. Like, I'll buy it just to prove a point.
What we do, for better or for worse.
No, I mean, it's the same thing. Like we're seeing that across the market. People are throwing up trash on the MLS and making money. We threw up trash on the MLS and made money. Like, I'm not going to say we didn't. We have one flip going on right now. That's a sweet deal, on all fronts, but it's like really balancing the budget and putting it out there for a price that's very competitive because you can't just throw it out there. You do have to wait for the right buyer that wants that property specifically. I have another listing, just a regular listing, not one of ours. And it's a terrible property. So we listed it earlier this year. It's a little 2-bed, 1-bath type, first time home buyer for a low income family or, an investor that wants to get a dirty property, more of a retail investor, and then fix it up and rent it out. We took it off the market, got the tenant out, and then the homeowners wanted to do some renovations to it
boring work.
Yeah. to make it better and more presentable. And I agreed with that idea. I was like, we should at least, because the tenant wouldn't leave when we were listing it. And even in the hottest market this spring that those people have ever seen, we've seen in a long time, we couldn't sell it. And we sold 3 other properties for them in that same time frame that are all similar. And so they go in there and they do the renovation. And I was just embarrassed. I was like, I don't even know if I can put my sign out front here. This is so bad. Like, it doesn't smell anymore, which is good, but it was just, I'm like, how did you even do you guys live in these kind of houses or something? Like, how did you think that would work? Or why didn't you just stop and call me? They know I'm a professional at this. I could have helped them. And now it's even worse. And they wanted to list it for like 30 grand more. So we did, and we're not getting anything on it. And so it's like that house though, the way it looks now is really trash, but like 6 months ago, you would have thrown that up there and we would have at least had some offers. So it's tough on all fronts, whether you're doing retail or off market for that sale, but you just have to dig deep into your list. And really, like you said, Mike, is just align your properties with the right buyers. And that way, and don't be greedy. Be fair. We're all on the same team here. We all got to make money and survive. So just do what's right. And if you're signing crappy deals, then just don't sign any deals at all, I guess.
Honestly. And that is one of my pet peeves with wholesalers, especially newbie wholesalers that are getting started. And, they're just so desperate for that money is they don't take into account the impact you have on the seller when you're signing around shitty deals. I mean, we went through a little phase here where I would say on the dispo side was not performing appropriately just because some of the systems and stuff we had in place over there. And we were having to cut people loose just because, the dispo wasn't doing what it needed to do. And that screws with people. Like, if they're expecting money and they start moving out, they put money down on an apartment. Like, if you're a wholesaler and you're doing stuff with these sellers, you need to understand that, realistically, they're going to start making moves in their life that will be extremely detrimental to them if you do not close the deal. Okay.
Yeah. I had to pick up the pieces on one of them, and I called the people and had to cut it loose, and they had already paid for. And mind you, we're buying their house at like $30,000, so this isn't like a real high end situation, a lot of income or anything like that, or high income, I should say. And they've already gotten a storage unit, $100 a month. That's huge for somebody that's selling their house for 30 grand. That's $1,200 a year. I mean, that's like a large percentage of the actual value of their home to get a storage unit. They move stuff. They leased up an apartment, and I had to cut it loose and said, hey, we just financially can't make this thing happen because the dispo wasn't working. And I felt terrible about it. I mean, that's really wrong to do to people. And so what I did in that situation was I found some other local wholesalers and connected them with those local wholesalers. So and those guys were excited to kind of pursue that lead. And so they did and help the people out, which is like, I'm glad we were able to at least do that for these people. Most people would have probably just, cut it loose. Or I've seen it where they just they just stop calling. They just don't answer their phone anymore.
They
like,
just ghost them. People are like, so when's our money coming? And they never hear from the investor ever again. So
they never hear from them again. Yep. Which, I mean, I get it. We've had sellers do that to us. So like it sucks. It sucks both sides. But
at the end of it, you realize you are dealing with people when you do this business, especially if you're a wholesaler, you're the middleman, you're the human representative on both the seller side and the buyer side. And you need to, have customer service on both sides of that. And there's bad actors in this space that do weird stuff, that do shady things, that don't give all the truth. But if you're working with like professionals, and like us that have like legitimate operation, we're going to try to do best by everyone. And if you want to be like us and you want to actually like have a business that's successful and, has traction and does these things on a regular basis and makes legitimate income, you have to do that same thing. Because if you don't, tell you what, you're going to start getting a bad reputation amongst sellers. Like, you believe it or not, the lower sort of class folks that we end up buying a lot of properties from, it's not a huge sphere. Even in like larger areas, like stuff gets around if you start doing it long enough. And then it will especially get around with buyers. If you get flagged as being a scummy wholesaler on the buyer side, man, you're not going to be able to move shit. Like, you're going to be in major trouble on the dispo side. No one will trust you, unless you can find like that one sucker that does, and then you're able to, do your shady thing with them or whatever, but you're eventually will run out. Like, that is not a long-lived strategy that you can get by there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of my friends, James Daynard over in Seattle,
you talked to him on the phone for like 5 minutes about one deal, and now he's your friend.
He's a friend of mine. He works at Bigger Pockets, as a celebrity influencer. He is a friend of mine.
Yeah. One of my friends, Brandon,
he made a
on a Zoom call with him in GoBundance like a month ago, and now we're good friends.
Hey, bro. You got to take it where you can. Anyhow, James Daynard, my friend, was stating that he paid $150,000 wholesale fee for obviously a luxury flip, so it was a higher end, and he was okay with that because there was profit on his end. But then he made a comment like, "Hey, wholesalers, like, don't get dirty with this. Like, we all have to make money. We all need each other. We're all essential to the process." All too often, you're right, people kind of screw up that relationship with the buyers because they get greedy on a deal. And we did on a Collecting Keys, I think maybe a Friday Focus episode a while back, where we talked about the decisions you make to keep your business alive long term. Yeah, you're leaving some money on the table. Well, some of those decisions are treating your buyers right and making deals or making good on your word. Where I've made good on my word with people where I said, "Hey, you can have this deal verbally at that price," and then somebody else, 20 minutes later calls literally and says, "Hey, I'll give you more than that." And I'm like, I want to take that, but I've verbally told this guy that I would do it. Even though we don't have a signed PSA, I said it. I don't want to ruin that relationship. Yeah, sure, we gave up quite a bit of money, but it's about keeping that buyer's list strong long term.
Times that exact situation.
I know it's terrible, and you're like you kind of like question yourself, but you're like, you know what? I'm making money. They're making money. Let's just do the right thing.
So, cool. Well, anyway, so for our educational topic this week, we wanted to address something which is going back to the very basics, because it's something that I guess we've taken for granted, the knowledge of it, just because we've been doing this for a little while. But we've had a lot of new buyers, as we sort of mentioned. If you're doing this disposition, if you find people that have specific needs, and you can bring them the opportunities, that's great. That's what they want. That's how you get stuff closed. We've been doing this recently, and people come back to us and say, "Okay, great. How do I buy from you? What does that look like to buy from a wholesaler?" So for this episode, we're going to go back to the very basics of what exactly is wholesaling a property, how do you buy something from a wholesaler, and what does that general process look like? So really quick, we are going to talk about our Instant Investor Program, which, by the way, if you want to be a wholesaler, you should go check out instantinvestorprogram.com, and we'll be back to talk about the general process. The Instant Investor Program is our 12-week group coaching program, which includes a self-driven course and access to our private investor community. We will take you through the full process of how we find our leads, how we market, how we do our sales and follow-up, and how we determine the best strategy for every opportunity that comes our way. On top of that, you will also join a community of other like-minded investors nationwide that are all marching towards the same goals, and you will have direct access to Dan and myself so you can continue learning and growing with us as we continue to adapt and grow our business. So whether you're a new investor or already established, our systems can help take you to the next level. So if you think you might be a good fit, go to the instantinvestorprogram.com and schedule a call, and we can have you talking to motivated leads in as little as 2 weeks. All right, guys. So wholesaling real estate, what exactly does that mean and how is it done? So essentially, what a wholesaler does is they work with the seller to get a property at a discounted price, and then they get a purchase and sale agreement signed with that seller between the wholesaler and that seller. And then you take that contract and you do what's called an assignment to another buyer. So you have a separate contract between the wholesaler and the buyer called an assignment contract, which basically outlines the fee that they're going to pay to be able to purchase that contract that you have with the seller. So very basic numbers. So you have a property that's worth $250,000. You work with the seller, place needs work, they need to sell fast, all that sort of stuff. You go and you get the contract for $120,000. So your name with the PSA with the seller is $120,000. Then you go and you find an end buyer and you say like, hey, you can buy this property from me for $130,000. And basically you will make that $10,000 split on the middle between the $130,000 and $120,000. That's what it looks like from the wholesaler side. When it comes...
Yep. And the reason why we call it assignment is because you're assigning your rights to the PSA.
So what that looks like on the buyer side, and if you are buying from a wholesaler, it is important to realize that distinction, that you are basically assuming that contract that the wholesaler has. So if you're working with a wholesaler, always make sure you know what the terms of that contract are, because you are now taking the liability of that contract. And if the wholesaler does some weird stuff, like you can get caught with that. Right. And like typically the assignment contract will have its own agreements with the wholesaler during the transaction process. But if there are terms with the original purchase and sale between the wholesaler and the seller that occur after the transaction takes place or at the closing table that you're not aware of, for example, maybe there's like a credit back to them to cover some sort of expenses. Credit back to seller to cover some sort of expenses. Maybe you're going to be paying more closing costs than you realize. Maybe you're going to be inheriting tenants, but they have agreed with the seller to let them keep the deposits and the rents, which is illegal, but we have seen this happen. And then the buyer shows up at the table and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that this was a thing, right? But you need to understand that it's going to be a risk. So always make sure you get that paperwork. And if a wholesaler is not willing to let you see that, don't do business with them. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, don't do it. Yeah. And you got to be careful too, because sometimes, we just daisy chained one down in Colorado Springs through New Western, and the end buyer was fortunately engaged and smart because he wanted to see the daisy chain of contracts all the way back to the original one. And that makes sense because you have no idea what you're literally assuming those rights. Like you said, Mike, you're assuming the rights to that purchase and sale agreement and whatever else is in between. And so you need to be sure you know what's going to happen once you do close on that. And I could definitely see how people would be blindsided at closing by not knowing what's going to happen. All of a sudden they walk into a property and there's still people there, even though they were told by some sleazy wholesaler that it would be vacant
in the contract with the seller. And that's something else too, is before you close on these deals, realize you're not the originator of the original contract. Do your due diligence and make sure that the things that were agreed to on there are actually followed through as much as they can be. And if they're not, then work with the wholesaler to figure out what needs to happen for all the details are to be figured out. Especially when it comes to tenants and things like that. So frequently there's a situation where it says in the contract that the tenant will be out at closing. but it's a 3-week close, and the seller of the property, who is the landlord for these tenants, cannot get them out. Closing time comes around, the tenants are still there, and the wholesaler will just be like, oh, just take it over. Like, yeah, I told you that the tenants are going to be gone. It says in the contract tenants are going to be gone. They're not, but I'm just going to try and push this thing through. You as the buyer need to verify that they're actually gone, because otherwise what will happen is the seller will be like, phew, dodge that one. Wholesaler will say, thanks, I got my money. And now the buyer's stuck with the situation and no way out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you hear the term like trust but verify. And this one, just don't trust and always verify, because you're buying real estate. You're buying property, and depending on the state you're buying it in, you might have some unfriendly landlord tenant laws. And so if it is a squatter situation or whatever, you might want to be careful. I mean, you're literally buying something that you're going to have legal obligation to. So don't trust,
this is coming
always
from people
verify.
who wholesale a lot of properties. And I've had tons of opportunity to screw people over, but we choose not to for that long-term reputation, right? I mean, so it's little details. And if it's something like, let's say in that situation, the tenants aren't going to be able to be out for some reason, and you're okay with that, that's fine. Just renegotiate something with the wholesaler, get it in writing, do it by the books. And, if you follow the rules and you make sure that there is a proper paper trail, you can protect yourself. And also, too, you can keep our industry alive, because the more people that are doing wacky stuff, the more the legislation is going to feel like they need to come and start regulating the off-market real estate business, which wouldn't be good for anybody.
Right. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. So I was going to step in and say, a lot of the questions I've been getting from newer buyers really stems from, okay, what do I do? They're not necessarily wholesalers. So this is a good conversation for anybody that's a new investor, or just somebody that maybe is a listener because they are an investor but aren't a wholesaler. They say, what do I do? Like, I see you posted this on Facebook, or I got your email off of, I'm on your list. What do I even do? Well, the first thing is, typically what you're going to get with wholesalers is, as is condition, and non-refundable earnest money. So you want to be able to walk the property if you can, unless you're a sight unseen buyer, and a wholesaler is always going to go with a sight unseen buyer if that's the option. I shouldn't say always, but most often they will, if it's easier to move it that way, right? Doesn't mean you shouldn't walk it and you should always buy sight unseen just to be competitive. It's just, that's the reality of the situation. Anyhow, so when you do that, like, obviously if you can walk the property, look at it, yep, I like it. So now you're going to sign the assignment contract and then submit earnest money. And your earnest money typically goes hard immediately at that point, unless there's some other contract terms that are agreed to. But typically that's what you're going to see. Where in a retail transaction, you're going to have all these contingencies. And once those contingencies are met according to the contract, your earnest money goes hard.
Goes hard, it means that if you fail to close, the earnest money will be going to the wholesaler.
Going right to the wholesaler. Yeah. So if you have some level of contingency, make sure that, like, that's you're going for it once you sign that assignment and you give your earnest money to title. So yes, you're going to get the assignment contract. They're usually very simple. Try and get the purchase and sale agreement with the assignment when you go to sign it, so that you can see them both at the same time. And then that assignment contract, typically the wholesaler will take that to a investor-friendly title company. We have a very investor-friendly title company we work with here in our home market, and we're always trying to find that. Not in every market, it's not that easy. Like some of these remote markets we're with, like I literally, when I send things over to title, I literally outline in detail escrow instructions for them and teach them how to do assignments, because not everybody does them. Some states you're going to have to go to a lawyer for the closing. In some states you can just use a title escrow company. Like here in Washington, we just use a typical title escrow company. We can use a lawyer, and we have used a lawyer. It does vary state by state and market by market what's available and who's investor friendly. So once that happens and you submit your earnest money, you're locked in to that contract, and they're typically going to be closed within 30 days as your typical wholesale closer. I know lately seems like we've been signing a little bit longer closings, just from giving us a little bit more time on the dispo side and a little bit more.
It's all like probates, divorces.
I know, right? Yeah, it's yeah. So we have one. There's 6 people on title, and they're all dead.
Except
we have to figure out the probate.
We're talking to.
Except
she's not on title.
But she's not on title, actually. No, Her dad is on the title, who's deceased as well. So anyhow, yes, assignment contract is signed. And that assignment contract is basically your contract. And like we said earlier, you are basically assuming the rights to the purchase and sale agreement. And it's basically a paperwork chain from the seller to you, basically giving you the opportunity, the rights to buy that contract. Earnest money goes in. At that point in time, as the buyer should be having their hard money or their cash lined up, however they're going to purchase that. If it's going to be hard money, then essentially a wholesaler may ask for proof of funds or something, proof that you're qualified at hard money lender prior to. So that's always good to have if you can work with a hard money lender prior to starting to put offers in. But anyhow, that's where you're going to line all that up and put your lender in contact with the title and escrow company or the attorney who's going to be doing the closing. And from there, there should be handling everything. And that's where you just need to verify before you sign the paperwork that everything has been met. A lot of times we'll do walkthroughs with buyers, final walkthroughs like you would on a typical retail listing to ensure tenants.
And I think a big emphasis point there as well is, if you have a good title company, really lean on them to do a lot of that dirty work. Like finding all the information with the sellers,
absolutely,
making sure that wills are figured out, or utilities are paid off, liens are paid off, all that sort of stuff. And something that we find that's very interesting with new wholesalers is that they always feel like they need to take on that burden themselves because they kind of have the relationship with the seller. That's literally what a title and escrow company's job is to take care of that. So let them do it. And we've had a lot of people in our instant investor program as well who have been like, well, they said they want to sell, but I don't want to sign it around until we know what the deal is with the probate situation. No, just freaking get it signed. Or like we had one actually who said like, yeah, I talked to the title company and they said they're going to charge me to look up all that. And I said, well, have you signed a contract and put it in escrow yet? He said, no. And I said, well, there's your problem. If you sign a contract, put it in escrow, they will do all that work because they're anticipating getting paid at the closing of the transaction. If you go and you ask them to do it beforehand, they're going to ask for some money for it, which isn't that expensive, a few $100, but like realistically, there's no reason to do that. If they are willing to sell, the price makes sense, go and get it signed around, get it in escrow, and then, work with the closer as needed, work with the seller as needed to help, provide a service to them to get all the things figured out. But once pieces are moving, you would be surprised at how much more motivated sellers are to get you all the information that's needed. If you're just kind of having a conversation too, it's something they've been running away from for 10 years. They're not going to start now. But when all of a sudden they can case the money, the third party's involved, they're having conversations about the actual sale, they're going to be right on it to get stuff done.
Yeah. And some of these title companies it's tough. Like you're paying the title company to do this, right? They don't do it for free. And so once you do get this contract in escrow and it's inevitable, there's a lot of times there's just weird situations that pop up, some unknown lien or some unknown family member on title from 30 years ago, some weird stuff. Either way, like let that title company like help them because you don't just say title company, do it at your job because you want this transaction just to close as bad as everybody else involved, but also don't make them have you do all the work. We work with some title companies in other states where they're like, hey, can you get me I need it's like 20 lines, including like the seller's, loan number and all this sort of stuff. It's like, no, how about you call the person? They're going to get it for you. Like, don't make me do all this work. I don't mind like kind of helping feed it, but I'm not going to go get all this information.
And escrow companies will kind of test you on that too, because they're trying to offload their work as well. And so you kind of have to train them, especially if it's a new relationship where you say, hey, we can get you those things. The seller should be able to help you out with all that and just give them the information. Then they'll figure it out. But they're going to lean on you.
Then they'll figure it out.
Exactly. So don't establish that relationship early, that's sort of how it's going to work, because that's how it'll always be.
Right. Yes, because otherwise you're going to need like double transaction coordination for all your stuff because it is a lot of work.
Realize they're making literally thousands of dollars on each transaction. Make them work for it. Yeah. Don't just give it to them for free. Don't pay them 1.5% of the transaction purely just to take the money from party A and give it to party B. Sure, that's important, but make them at least do all the back checking and make sure it's a legitimate transaction. You don't need to do all that for them. So, but anyway.
Yep. I just got a new business plan. We're going to start a title company. You just made that sound way too awesome.
Did that recently. You know, I think that's what Steve Trang does too. It's not like his main gig is he has a title company. Like before he started.
Probably a lot of guys do. I know a lot of investors that step into title companies and
I think it's because we all
build
realize
franchises.
As you get into it and start doing a lot of transactions, how not complicated it is, and how most companies suck just because like they have poor systems and poor customer service. Which is funny. Anyway, so to wrap it all around, the assignment process, we got all in the weeds there. You're getting a contract with the seller as the wholesaler. You're selling that contract to an end buyer with that assignment contract. And then as the buyer side, as the buyer, make sure you're doing your due diligence. You're making sure that everything, that you understand the full contract, what you're agreed to, that all the terms are met before you close. Let the wholesaler let the escrow company do all the work, right? It's just like any other transaction, but instead of having like realtors that, you kind of like talk up to and then they talk to each other, you're basically talking directly to the parties and the wholesalers representing both sides. Like it's not crazy rocket science. For some reason, people seem to think it is. And I think it doesn't help either that a lot of wholesalers are kind of like smooth talking all over the place and they make stuff sound super interesting, but it really is pretty simple at the end of the day. So cool. So anything else to finish that up, Dan?
Cool. No, I think you summed it up really well.
Cool, guys. Nice job. Well, thanks for listening. Please go and subscribe to this show and leave us a 5-star review. The next person that leaves us a 5-star review, I'll announce their name on here, and then if you give us your email, I'll send you a T-shirt or something. I don't know. I want to get some more 5-star reviews, but yes. Yeah,
I'm gonna go write a 5-star review.
Finally get Dan his T-shirt. But go subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and download as many episodes as you can. Besides that, you can follow me on Instagram at Mike_invest. You can follow Dan at InvestorManDan. And then if you want to learn how to be a wholesaler and how to make some fat stacks on putting deals together, you can go and check out the InstantInvestorProgram.com. It is our group coaching program, which now also features a one-on-one coaching element where, if you sign up with it, you will actually get one-on-one time with us once a month where we will actually literally physically help you build your business and dive into the weeds of what you're doing. And so for a less price than you probably think, you can get some direct coaching from us. So go check that out, InstantInvestorProgram.com. Besides that, Dan, anything else? Cool.
Nope. No. Nice. Go sign up and get those fat stacks. We're going to teach you click by click how to do it. That's how we coach. Awesome. Click by click.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.